Hello everyone, Max Grinnell here for the Urbanologist with Ranger Susan Cook. We are here in Beatrice, Nebraska at the Homestead National Monument, and she's going to tell us a little bit about one of the park's more unique and interesting features.
It's actually called the Living Wall, and it reaches 40 feet, and it's a visual way of showing how many places homesteaded. There were 30 different states that homesteaded. The squares cut out in each of the states represents the percentage of that state that homesteaded. So you're going to see, like Utah has a smaller portion of it, Nevada, very small portion of it, New Mexico, half the state, Nebraska is half the state. So there are some places that have huge amounts. It was basically what land was available that the government owned, because it had to be government-owned land that was given out through this law. So you can kind of see right here, 30 states that homesteaded are in the light color. The darker colors were the ones that did not homestead, and it was basically they didn't have land available, mainly the original colonies, and Texas because of the Spanish land grants there. So they were not able to use it there. So like New Mexico, I mean, this law wasn't repealed until 1986. We know 4 million people filed claims, about half of them actually making it the 5 years to own their land. One of the projects that I've been working on is finding the living homesteaders. We know the first person, we know the last person, we know it wasn't repealed until 1986, so who are the rest of these people? They're alive, we need to find their stories. We have about 60 found right now, and one of them is in New Mexico, and he was telling me how he lived on his land for 3 years without a water source. Every day he went with his team in his wagon with barrels 3 miles away to get water for him to use on his home. So it was just amazing what people went through, all on the opportunity to make their life better and lives better, the lives of their children and grandchildren better.
Ranger Cook, I heard another ranger talking about there have been some notable recent people who've had homesteads. I believe she had mentioned the pop singer Jules.
Jewel grew up on a homestead in Alaska, Homer, Alaska. In fact, her father has been here multiple times and has become a good friend of mine. So Oz Kilcher's been here, and they homesteaded in Homer, Alaska, and Jewel grew up on that homestead. And it was, Whoopi Goldberg is a descendant of a homesteader, and it was Dr. Henry Louis Gates from Harvard that found that. He's the one who located that.
Oh, fantastic.
So yeah, there's amazing people that have homesteaded.
Wow. I mean, it is. I mean, it's just amazing to take a look as I scan through some of the other states: Idaho, Nevada, California, Alaska. And Nevada is, interesting enough, relatively small, but you know, there's so much of that state is given up to the Bureau of Land Management too.
Right.
So, I mean, it's definitely a big federal presence in that state. But just take a look at that. Wow. And this was, as you were saying to me earlier, this was installed when the building was opened in 2007.
It's part of the building.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, another reason really to come to Beatrice and check things out here.
Well, and they estimate there's 93 million descendants of homesteaders alive in the country today. And so people have a connection to it, even though they may not realize the connection that they have, but it's impacted so many people. One of the main themes of the park is how it changed immigration-migration patterns for the whole world. Ellis Island wasn't needed until the height of homesteading, when it was open, and when homesteading subsided, Ellis Island was closed. So the direct relationship with the immigration coming to this country, it hastened the Industrial Revolution. All of these new small farms needed equipment, and they couldn't afford to have one of everything.
Right.
So that's when interchangeable parts began. Assembly lines began, and they moved manufacturing plants out west, which they considered way west was Chicago, Cleveland, which I think that's kind of funny now too, that that was considered way out west, way out there. Agricultural evolution began because of this law. As soon as they had one piece of equipment figured out, they had a new and better way of doing it, or procedures, and they're still doing that today. The farmers today are still doing those things. It changed the tallgrass prairie to the breadbasket of the world. There's less than 1% of it left in the country, but it also became the breadbasket. It's where we feed much of our country, is right in the heartland.
Right. We saw earlier, there's we have a little bit of a remnant, nice remnant of it, right on the other side of the visitor center.
Right. And it changed the lives of Native Americans. Their lives could not continue the way they were. So we show both sides of the story and everything that happened, not just the grandiose things.
Right. Yeah. The lives of people who are coming out here to work the land, and kind of the relationship with the people back in the factories and the major urban centers.
Right.
Oh, this is great.
And you have half those people who filed a claim didn't make it. Well, they still played a huge role in the development of our country because they started moving into the towns. Doctors weren't cut out to be the farmer, but they were needed. So they're all different people that they may not make it as a homesteader, but their skills were needed in the communities that were growing.
Mm.
So,
Well, thank you, Ranger Cook, and we're going to keep on and take a few more visits around the other parts of the monument.